Hello everybody, it's Kat from the Bonnyville Library, and today we are doing some crafting. So what I have for you today is a fairy light jar or a firefly jar, whatever you want to call it. What it is a glow-in-the-dark jar that you've painted with glow-in-the-dark paint, and then as it charges under the light, in the dark, it will glow. And it's a really nice little thing if you're looking for some nighttime decorations, or maybe as a little night light in your room as you're falling asleep, and then through the course of the night it will glow less and less and less. Or any other kind of decoration that you want to add a little bit of sort of fairy or ethereal look to your decor. Let's get started. I have a few recommendations. I tried a couple of things with my first jar here. I tried sort of painting streaks or lines, and it didn't really work very well. I also tried mixing my glow-in-the-dark paint with some colored glitter glue to get a little bit of color, some orange and some green, and that didn't really work. That kind of made the glow-in-the-dark paint less effective. So in the daytime you can see the paint and the glitter, but it doesn't really look very great when it's glowing in the dark. You lose some of that glow effect because you've mixed your glow paint with other things. So I recommend just using the glow paint and doing dots to get the best effect. Any kind of jar will work. What you want to make sure is that you can get to the bottom of it with your paintbrush easily, so that whether you have a wider opening at your jar so you can get your hand in, or you have a long enough paintbrush that you can get down to the bottom of the jar, because you do want to get paint on the bottom of your jar. And then also make sure that your jar is nice and clean, on the inside especially, because we'll be putting the paint on the inside of the jar. So some hot soapy water, and if you can't get your hand all the way in there, then get your dishcloth in there, and then maybe use a spoon to get down in there and rub the dishcloth down into the bottom corners and the edges so that you get it nice and clean on the inside. If you still have some gunky residue from the label on the outside of the jar, you can try putting some oil, whether you have baby oil or cooking oil, on some paper towel, and put that paper towel around and let it sit for a while, and that might help get the gunk off of your jar that's left over from the label. A little bit, if it's see-through, won't make a huge difference, but if you still have lots of chunks of label still stuck, then it won't glow as nicely. So I have my plastic mat here, so I'm going to squirt some of my paint out. You don't need a lot, and if you have the kind of paint jar that you can just dip your brush into, then you don't need to squirt it out onto a surface. You can always add more paint. It's hard to put it back into the tube. And I have glow-in-the-dark craft paint. If you have glow-in-the-dark fabric paint, that would work too, whether it's a puff paint or a different kind of glow-in-the-dark fabric paint, that would work too. But I wouldn't recommend using a face paint, because that is designed to wash off. So you want to get some paint on your brush and dab spots all over the inside of your jar. And I recommend starting with the bottom first. And you want your dots to be kind of thick, a little bit goopy, not too thin. The thinner they are, the more times you'll have to go over top. the thinner your streaks are, the less they'll glow. So you keep doing that. I recommend going from the bottom up. So that way, if your hand is in the jar, you don't end up smearing any of the paint around the top because you've worked all the way up. Get right into the corners too. So you just work on this. So keep going until you've gotten all the way around the inside of your jar, all the way from the bottom to the top. And then let it sit and dry a little bit, even just 20 minutes, just so it starts to dry a little bit. And then you can take a look and you can see from the outside where you have gaps that you want to fill in and where your spots are thin, so then you can go back in and go back over top of those spots. If you try to do it while your paint is too wet, you'll just smear the spots around. So let them start to dry before you go back in. And keep on doing that until you've done the whole entire jar. So I have one coat of paint done here, and I know that I'll have to go back in and do at least a second coat. You'll probably need to do 2 or 3. And that glob of paint that I had was all I needed to do this whole jar one time. Don't worry too much if some of your spots are streaky or if you make a few lines here or there. It'll add some interesting effects as it's glowing, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get as many spots all over as you can. And as it's drying, I can see some of it is getting pretty clear. So it'll glow, but it'll be really, really faint, which means that those are spots that I'll want to go back in and do a second coat on for sure. And the great thing is I can let this charge in the light and then look at it in the dark and see, oh, it doesn't glow as much as I want it to. I'll definitely add some more. So it's really fun, really easy, doesn't have to be perfect, but you get a really cool effect when it's all finished. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, you might have to do a few coats of the paint. You can always test it and see how brightly it glows. And if you want it to glow more, then go back in and add dots of paint back over top. The thicker your layers of paint or the more dots you have, the better it will glow. To a point, you don't have to go crazy with the paint. I hope you enjoy this craft. Have a wonderful day.